What if I told you that the biggest reason marriages fail today isn't lack of love, but the belief that if your spouse, your husband, your wife doesn't think exactly like you, the relationship is doomed? That's exactly what played out on season 8 of Love is Blind, where Sarah left Ben at the altar. Can you believe that? We're going to dive into why. Why did she do that? And what implications does this have on the institution of marriage and in some ways on your marriage? We're going to find out in this video today. And here's how things began to unfold in this series of Love is Blind. Let's watch this together.
I love you so much. But I've always wanted a partner to be on the same wavelength. And so today I can't.
As you have watched that, what you've noticed is that Sarah, she says she still what? Loves him, right? I've heard that statement so often when couples are at some crossroad in their lives. One will say, I still love him, but I'm not in love with him. I am still trying to figure out what that means. And that's for another video. But for this one, notice what she prioritizes: ideological alignment, right? Or ideological alignment, depends on how you pronounce that, over commitment, right? It's about ideology over commitment, over communication, over love. She prioritized that or those things over the most important thing. And that's a dangerous, right? A dangerous precedent, a dangerous trend we're seeing in marriages today, unfortunately. Now, the real problem that I see is misunderstanding what makes a strong marriage. What is it that you need to have to build happier marriages? Well, first, marriage isn't about agreeing on every issue. It's about choosing unity over division. I can tell you from firsthand experience, having been married as of this recording, almost 40 years, right? You get that right, 40. I'm knocking on the door um, of 40 years. I've been married since 1985. So I have had some experiences. And so I'm speaking from a personal experience, but also from a professional. I've actually been a licensed marriage and family therapist and a certified relationship coach doing work with couples like yourself for almost 2 decades. And so I've seen all kinds of relationship issues. And so when I say marriage isn't about agreeing on every issue, I think that I have some credibility in speaking about this. And I'm not tooting my own horn, but I would think you would hopefully agree with that. So it's about choosing, right? Unity. I tell couples many times that I work with couples or work with a wife like you, and I would say this: hey, it's not about who is right, it's about what is right. And secondly, I say it's not about who wins, is that the relationship wins. What I'm trying to simply say is, how do you get to a place where you can be unified and have a united approach to whatever issues you're dealing with? I can tell you, we had to navigate as a couple, my wife and I, this very thing. I don't think we would have been married for 40 years. Number one, because of God's grace. I want to make sure I give credit to God. He is the ultimate one that have kept us. He taught us and given us wisdom how to navigate different moments in our lives. And I can say from firsthand, in full transparency, we have actually had to seek out help from other people. Like, we've gone to counseling, we've seen pastors and other leaders that we've known, coaches, to help us, whether it's individually or together, to somehow learn better skills to be able to navigate our rough patches, as every couple do have, right? But it's about choosing. to have the relationship win over our either of us winning, right? Second Corinthians 6 verse 14 talks about being equally yoked, right? But there's a very important thing that the Bible says that it's we should never be unequally yoked, and I'll talk more about that in a few moments. And we see that played out in Sarah and Ben's lives, but that's not about politics or social issues, right? That do have a part to play as far as values and your belief system, right? It's very important that that is shared to some degree. It doesn't have to be perfect, but at least have some ways of the nuance of that where you can actually negotiate and talk about those matters and having a heart for the relationship. Now, what it's about though is a shared faith and commitment to God as a foundation of the marriage. When that is in place, you are elevating marital um, position, the relationship above everything else, and you're working hard to make sure the relationship, the marriage win. You can tell based on what we'll see in a few moments that Sarah was struggling with her heart and her head. And this is where a lot of couples struggle. Maybe you are struggling as well as you watch this, as you listen to me, and thinking of your own marriage. Your heart is telling you one thing, but your head is saying another. Have you ever experienced that? Or are you experiencing that? And it is a conflict, right? It's an internal conflict. We just don't know what to do at that moment. And this is where I think Sarah found herself. And you'll see in this clip where Sarah struggles with her decision, says she feels one way, but knows another. Let's watch this together.
I know that the connection we have is so real, and my heart is there. But we talked about a lot of the values that I hold so close to my heart. Making this decision, my mind is telling me I can't. Rise and fall right now.
What you've seen is Sarah admits she feels deeply connected to Ben, right? But because his views don't check every box, she walks away. I mean, imagine that. And one of my thing is, why did it take this long? Why did she go through all the preparation and allowed Ben and whoever else to go through all the preparation? And then at this critical moment, when all you're going to do is sign off on what you have actually planned and then to walk away. Why didn't she walk away before? I don't get it. I really don't get it. If you have an understanding and full transparency, I've never watched Love is Blind. I really only came across this video in on my social media feed, and I got intrigued, very interested, and began to think I would love to do some kind of commentary, so to speak, on this video, which I'm doing right now. So if you've watched it and you have different thoughts about what might be going on here, why she waited up on this point, I would love to hear. So make sure you comment below and let me know and school me on this. I am willing to be schooled, and maybe I'm missing something. But why did she wait until this moment? So she chose to walk away because Ben did not check every box. Here's what I know. You will not check every box. Your spouse will never check every box because that's a perfection. And you don't have a perfect spouse. No one does. It's your commitment. And that's what I think is lacking so much in marriages today. Commitment, right? And so this is exactly why so many marriages, I believe, break down and fail, not because of major betrayals, even though that in itself does lead to breakup in marriages and should in some cases. Well, let me take that back. It may not always should have to end up that way because I've seen in my work so many couples who've had a betrayal and have actually reconciled and have gone on to live much more better lives, right? Live more, I mean, a fantastic life afterwards. So it doesn't have to always end that way. Even though the Bible does subscribe and say, for this reason, should a divorce happen, but it doesn't mean it has to. You can still work through some of those issues, and that's another video I need to work on if you so choose to hear more about that. Now, so it's not because of major betrayals, but because couples fail to navigate differences with God's wisdom, grace, and biblical truth. Because God's wisdom and grace and truth talks about how to navigate these tough issues in a relationship. And it sounds like Ben had that foundation and was willing to do that with Sarah, but she wasn't. She wasn't. So here, what are the dangers then of letting cultural issues override biblical unity? Well, let's talk about why she walked away. It wasn't because Ben, based upon what I have understood, and so far, based on what I've seen, maybe again, if you know otherwise, please comment below. Let's have a conversation. It wasn't because he mistreated her. It wasn't because he lacked character. It was because he didn't have strong opinions about certain political and social issues. He thought those were majoring on the minor, and some people do major on the minor and not on the majors, right? The things that matters most to marriage, it sounds like he would be more than likely be willing to go to bat on those things, not on these minor things, but she made the minor the major. So watch how she brought up issues that were politically and socially based and used that to make her decision to not follow through on marriage. Let's watch this together as she brought up such social matters as Black Lives Matter and vaccines and the church's stance on. Come on, Sarah. Let's watch and you tell me what your thoughts are.
It's not like I feel like I know him. Like really. Yeah. Like I remember like I asked him about like Black Lives Matter and I'm no expert. But like when I asked him about it, he was like, I guess I never really thought too much about it. That affected me, especially in our own city. Like how could it not? How did it not make you think about something? I asked him to like what his church's views are, and he said he didn't know. And so then I watched a sermon online
from his church
about, yeah, sexual identity.
Okay.
And it was traditional. I told that to Ben. And
his thoughts on
he
it.
doesn't really have much to say about it, you know? I want him to think about that stuff.
Now, don't get me wrong. Discussing values is important. So I want you to hear me say that. But if we start treating marriage like a political debate instead of a covenant before God, we replace love with division, right? Colossians 3, verse 13 and 14 says, bear with each other and forgive one another. That's what the Bible says. And then it continues, and over all these virtues, put on love, which binds them all together in perfect harmony and perfect unity. Sarah did the opposite. She let these external issues divide what could have been a strong marriage built on love and faith. I have read a lot of the commentary and people have written on social media. And one of the things I've seen that was really stood out to me, someone says, dude, you dodged a bullet. You dodged a bullet. You should be happy that it did not go through because no marriage is better than a bad marriage. So again, I'm not saying that I think most people have seen that, and maybe they have other opinions and ideas based upon what they've seen. Again, I have not seen this whole series or this reality show, so I may not be the best person to comment in this regards that he dodged a bullet, but maybe he did. Maybe he dodged a bullet by her walking away at the altar. And sometimes maybe that's the best thing that can happen to some couples because a bad marriage is worse than no marriage, right? Here's another thing I want to mention is the role of mutual submission and understanding. What Sarah did here is something I see a lot in marriages. People expect their spouse to be a mirror instead of a partner. right? They want a replica of themselves. And sometimes people get into relationship with this false notion they're going to change their partner. I'm going to change him. I'm going to change her. No, you're not. And you should not want to change your partner. What about you and your partner adjusting and adapting and be flexible and learn from each other? But that's not how God designed marriage. God designed marriage as two people coming together and working through things. Iron sharpen iron. You become better at life because of your partner who should not be like you. You don't want two of yourself, right? I would not want to be married to a woman, my wife being just like me. No, and that'd be boring. That would be like, I don't want that. I hope you're not wanting that either. And my wife would not want to marry someone just like her because we would never at some time do certain things because we're just different. And she brings to the table some things I don't, and I bring to the table some things she don't. And that's what makes a beautiful complementary marriage. That's what I think it's all about because you're two different people, right? Who will navigate your differences along the way and find a middle ground. Sarah refused to do that. And so, is it any wonder, um, is it any wonder that she began to second guess herself? And even sometimes it's seemingly contradicting herself. She says, Ben is a great person, but she's unsure if she made the right choice. Really, Sarah? You mean it took this long to decide? You mean, are you telling me after all this time, you're now going to say, I think I'm not sure if I'm making the right choice? I think that is something you would need to have figured out and should have figured out before now. But it didn't happen this way. So let's watch what Sarah had to say.
Because it's sad. Like, I was really excited about Ben. And I'm like, he's such a great person. I just, like, what? I just hope I made the right decision.
Now, as you've seen, she's torn because deep down she knows relationships aren't about finding someone who thinks just like you. She knows that. Their relationship is about building a life together, even when you don't agree on everything. But Sarah seemed to have missed that. Or she began to possibly was influenced by other people. Maybe somebody got into her head that she allowed for some reason. Maybe it's an ideology that got into her head. Maybe it's her family member, because sometimes family members can be intrusive, but not just family members, close friends as well, who can disrupt what a good thing. So we got to be careful of who we allow to speak into our heads, especially when we're making a big decision like this. I don't know who may have gotten into her head. Do you know anything that I'm missing here? But what I do know is that um, relationships are about building a life together, even when you don't agree on everything. You know, Ephesians 5, verse 21, the Bible says, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. Submit to one another. It means working through differences because God knows you're a different person than your spouse. I mean, God knew that. That's why He brought you together. You've heard the phrase opposite attracts, right? There's a reason for that. There's a very good reason. It's not just a cliche. There's a very good reason for that. So you can work and help sharpen the other person and work on the rough edges that you need that person in your life. So it means working through your differences with love and grace as you submit to one another, not walking away at the first disagreement. I can tell you, if I walked away or my wife walked away at the first disagreement in our marriage, we would have been divorced 1,500 times. I mean, that's exaggerating, but we would not be together today. We have differences, but differences are not bad. It just means we have to approach them differently, right? That's what differences are all about. So, what does this mean for Christian wives a wife like you who may have an entrepreneurial husband, and possibly you get into your head about the relationship, the marriage. What I have noticed is many Christian wives watching this, maybe you watching this, feel at times unseen or disconnected because your husband is so focused on his business. And I have covered a number of videos on this topic that you can go back and watch. And I would love for you to do so because you will see as I go a bit deeper in those other videos about how a wife feels unseen and what might she want to do differently. So it can feel like you're not on the same page, which I get it, right? But here's the truth. When your husband is that way, it's not because he's ignoring you. He's carrying the weight of provision. And I just wanted to show basically, I again, it's a shameless plug, but I want to show this is my new book that you can find on Amazon. And I cover this topic quite a bit in my book because I think it's so important for you to know that about your husband to better understand him. And I went in, full depth really, talking about that here. And again, I would love for you to get a copy on Amazon because I think it would help you in your own relationship. Because this idea of you thinking he's ignoring you may be totally opposite. I can tell you, as a husband myself, who's an entrepreneur, we carry a lot of weight on our shoulders. We carry weights that you would never even know. And many times we just don't know how to communicate that as effectively as we should. And so we kind of pull into our own world, in our own cave, not because we don't want to be with you. It's because we just don't know how to handle it. We have fear of failure, fear of you somehow seeing us as in a different way, a number of things. And that's why, again, I mentioned I covered this in the book because I wanted that to go deeper. And I would have to do 1,500 videos to be able to do that. So, again, you can avail yourself to that as well. And that's one of the reasons why I wrote this book, because like Sarah, who's struggling with what she is now struggling with, um, that you can better understand this dynamic, right? And so, what you might start thinking about your relationship is that, is it real? Do we truly, are we going to survive this? And, or maybe like Sarah, you start looking at the surface things and interpret and add meaning to your relationship based upon surface thoughts and surface ideas and not the truth that are happening. And Sarah did that. And so let's watch together what this looks like from Sarah's perspective.
Sometimes I did wonder if it was surface, fun, carefree love that we had, equality, religion, um, the vaccine.
I haven't seen that. Let me just say, wives, our dear wife, this is exactly why understanding your husband is crucial, right? And I cannot emphasize that enough. Just because he processes things differently, just because he doesn't have the same emotional response as you, doesn't mean he doesn't care. I think Ben, who was thinking about the political and societal issues, right? Social issues, and didn't seem to care that much. It doesn't mean he didn't care about Sarah. She missed that. Him not caring so much about those things, she might interpret that he doesn't care or having, whatever else was going through her head. I can't speak for her, but maybe she misinterpreted that. And in fact, his love might show up in ways that she overlooked. And maybe in your relationship, your husband's love is showing up in ways that you're overlooking and maybe not recognizing, and where he's probably thinking, what does he have to do? Because he may not feel acknowledged as you're feeling unseen and unheard. He's also having his own emotional issues as well. But one thing I want to let you know, dear wife, is that your husband um, do more than likely see you this way, as Proverbs 31 verse 11 says about a husband. It says, her husband has full confidence in her and lacks nothing of value. Maybe your husband have more confidence in you than you think he does. He sees you in a different way. But what we have failed to do as husband and I'm guilty of that myself, is to communicate that as effectively as you would like for us. And I do have to take responsibility, and your husband have to take responsibility of that and not put the blame on you fully. But I just want you to understand that maybe he's not doing what you think he is doing, or behaving in a manner you're interpreting that to be, right? Because I love, again, one of my favorite scriptures is Proverbs 14, verse 1, where it says, a wise woman builds her home, but a foolish woman tears it down with her own hands. And I believe that you're a wise wife who's building your home. And therefore, your role, dear wife, is to build trust and unity, not create division over differences. Sarah did that. And how did that work out for her? And this is what you've heard so far is just one of the issues I unpack in the 5 pillars that I teach inside the Happier Marriage by Design bootcamp. And I want you to imagine what your marriage could look like if you applied all the 5 pillars I discuss and unpack in that bootcamp. If you want to know more and get on a waiting list for the next bootcamp, I want you to go to buildyourhappiermarriage.com/waitlist. Get on the wait list, but also get a free PDF download that I have to help you in addressing some issues as you've heard here, and as my gift to you while you're on the waiting list. So again, buildyourhappiermarriage.com/waitlist. Get on that. So today, I know I kind of went a bit long, but I think I wanted to make this point. And so here are the key takeaways from this video. Number one, marriage thrives on shared faith, not identical opinions. Number two, don't let cultural issues override biblical unity. And number three, if you focus on love, commitment, and understanding, your marriage can withstand differences. So, what do you think? Did Sarah make the right choice, or did she let external pressures dictate her future? Let me know in the comments below your thoughts, and maybe if you have watched this reality TV reality show that I have not, I would love to hear. Maybe you have some insights that I may have missed in that regard. And if you have not yet subscribed to the channel, can I ask you to go ahead and subscribe even and get to watch more of these videos? I would really appreciate that. And make sure you watch this other video you see right here. With that said, may God bless you, and I'll see you on the next video. God bless. Peace out.